1. For the record, I don't believe in the occult, and it's my first time asking for advice. My dreams have always been very vivid. A recurring one involves my childhood home as a constant setting. I left when I was around 11 to another part of the country, although we used to return every few years. Dreams there sometimes involve people, old, dead, but always friendly. Sometimes it's a life lesson that I realize when I wake up. It's generally a distinct type of dream that leaves me emotional when I awake. Other than that setting, I have had a series of scary dreams in my current room. It's just a foreboding presence that I struggle to wake up against. Usually can't escape the room. When I try to get out, I wake up again in my own bed, realize it was a dream, and try to get out again, only to wake up again realizing I'm still in the dream. 7 out of 8 times on a repeat cycle till I push the weight off my chest and really wake up. Lately I've started fighting back with good humor in these dreams, and I think it's been successful. This kind of dream is pretty rare though, so I don't really care. The experience that made me post this happened last night. I slept at 3 a.m., woke up drowsy at 5 a.m., with a feeling that someone had been trying to ask me leading questions, but without words, in the dream I just had. I was nudged to a dream about where I live, and when I dreamed about the answer I felt like they would know it. So I try to avoid thinking about specifics, like answering with an image of my country flag instead. The dream was not scary. The entity asking me felt non-hostile, just nudging me towards personal questions. I was slightly worried after I woke up since it's never happened before, and my brain started putting the dream sequence together into a pattern of question and answers. The movie Inception came into my mind, but I shut it out, laughed at myself, and went back to bed. I woke again at 7 p.m. This time I dreamed of a bearded man who had sauntered through my dream space, which was a slightly modified version of my current room. The overall mood of the dream was cheerful, with him casually inspecting my room and leaving me with a suggestion that he had brought me a gift. In the dream, my room itself had one wall modified with the brand color of my bank. The area above it looked like the ceiling and wall was joined in a way that could be opened up, and in a distinct red color. My bed had some boxes, gift, which looked like computer parts, some of which I had bought a couple years back. When I woke up, I was no longer in the same mood as in my dream. For the first time in my life, I feel someone is purposefully rifling through my memories. Advice, please. 2. This year in January, I just broke up with my boyfriend. I was so angry and was going way over the speed limit on my parents' dirt road in the middle of the forest. I hit some really soft sand and lost control of my car, flying through the woods and hitting a tree. A few branches went through my windshield, and one impaled the roof of my car. I can remember having a really sharp feeling in my right eye. It was like I almost didn't feel it at first because of the adrenaline. I reached up, and I could feel a huge broken piece of branch sticking out of my socket, and everything was covered in blood. I searched for my phone, then opened the car door and just fell out and laid on the ground. I called 911 and told them I got in an accident and there's a branch sticking out my eye. The ambulance came and got me. They didn't take the branch out at all. They left it in there and I had surgery to get it removed at the hospital. When I woke up from surgery, my parents were there at the hospital, looking almost sick to their stomachs. The doctors told me there was no way they could save my eye, and I need to let my wounds heal. So over the next 2 weeks I visited both an ophthalmologist and an optometrist. I've had discussions about possibly getting an artificial eye in the future, but my parents were loaning me a shitload of money for my surgeries and appointments. I was severely depressed and nearly suicidal. For those 2 weeks I only left my house if I absolutely had to. My mom said to me one night that I lost my eye, but I could have lost my life and that I was here for a reason, along with some other stuff. This conversation meant a lot to me. And then, the very next morning after that conversation, I woke up and something felt different. I didn't know what it was, but I also had the most energy I've had since the accident. I looked in the mirror in my bedroom, and I had both my eyes. I still had the stitches on my cheek underneath my right eye, and some scratches around it, and it was bruised pretty bad, but the eye was still there. I started ugly crying, just completely sobbing, and went straight to my parents' room. She was so worried, and she thought something was wrong. I told her my eye was okay, and that I didn't lose my eye. She was confused and said, "Of course you're not going to lose your eye." After having a pretty mutually confusing conversation, she told me I never had surgery, never saw any eye doctors. The only thing I needed was stitches on my cheek and staples on my head under my hair. She even showed me the pictures she took to prove it. I can't explain what happened over those 2 weeks after the accident. Over that time, I learned a bunch of eye terms that I didn't know before. I have newfound knowledge about eye surgery and artificial eyes, etc. There's no way I imagined it. It was reality to me. I've had to try to come to terms with losing my eye, but none of it was actually real. I still talk about this all the time to friends and family. I found such an appreciation for my life after this. I've never been a religious person, I'm still not, but now I'm open to the idea that anything's possible. I am so grateful. 3. I was about 13 or 14 years old, and I was sitting on the floor in my parents' room watching TV with them. I think it was the Drew Carey show or something like that. While we're watching, the news breaks in. I got this hard, dark feeling that I never got before and haven't gotten since. They show a symbol to represent a bank. Picture the back of a penny with the pillar building. But it only had 4 pillars. And next to that was a $sign. To me, this meant bank. The news person says something about a bank robbery and everything goes fuzzy. I can't see straight, and everything goes mumbled, so I start crying. My mom comes over and starts asking me what's wrong, and I just say, "Don't go to work tomorrow." And she asks why, and I say, "I don't know, I just have a bad feeling. Please don't go in." At the time, she worked in a bank. I look back up and the TV show is still on, and the news never came on. I cried some more because I was scared and didn't know what was going on. The 8 o'clock news came on after the show, and I was waiting for them to say it, and they never did. I still had this ominous feeling, but trying to be rational, I told myself I must have started to zone off and daydreamed or something. I went to bed later that night, and my mom went to work as normal the next day. Everything felt fine, and I started to feel a little silly feeling that way the previous night. But whatever, let's forget about it. My mom came home from work after shift and immediately found me while I was doing my homework, and said, "You're never going to believe this, my bank got robbed last night." Then she told me it wasn't the location she works at, it was the one she used to work at before she got transferred a few weeks or months prior to that. We were all in shock. We watched the news and it never came up. She only found out because her boss told her about it, but they didn't make it public because they wanted to catch the people first. The weirdest part is neither of my parents remember this happening. I know it happened. I think about it all the time, and it's been over 10 years. I've always had odd déjà vu moments before this, where I could predict something about to happen, but only less than a second before it happens. So as I say it, it happens, and seems like it's not a prediction. This one time I had déjà vu while looking out my window at my road, and knew which 3 cars were going to come by, in which order, about 5 seconds before they did. Nobody else was around, but I said it out loud to make sure it wasn't a time trick in my head. And I saw the colours, white truck, red, red, and as the last syllable comes out of my mouth, a white truck followed by 2 red cars came around the corner. There was no way of seeing in that direction. My house was set back, and my neighbour's house was on the street blocking the view. I could only see from the corner of the neighbour's house to my left, to the main road on the right. They came from the left, from behind the house. I was so amazed, I tried focusing in on my déjà vu to see if I could do it again. But my déjà vu has subsided for the most part, and it happened maybe once in the past year. I was caught so off guard I just froze and couldn't think. Back then, it was almost a daily occurrence. so it didn't shock me, and it felt as if time would slow during it, and I could think about things with almost no time passing. 4. When I was 17, my closest friend was having trouble at home. My family opted to take him in and put him through his senior year of high school. They moved him in the summer before, which is where this all begins. I was helping my friend, let's call him Jay, carry his duffel bags to the bedroom. The hallway was 20 feet long and ended in a junction with the doors to 3 bedrooms. My room was on the left side, and his was in the center of the 3. While he was unpacking, we were talking and catching up. There was a lapse in conversation, in which I decided to grab something from my room. After exiting the room and turning to walk into mine, I remembered that I forgot to ask him something, so I stopped in my tracks, put my hand on the doorframe, turned my head, raised my voice and asked. No reply. I turned around and asked him again as I walked around the corner, but he was gone. Now me and Jay would occasionally screw with each other and hide behind this and that to scare each other. But this was different. The light was different. Everything had a haze to it. A blue, muted haze. It felt cold, but not in a physical way. I called his name as I searched that room relentlessly, but turned up nothing. I started searching the entire house from top to bottom, every closet, cranny, and nook. Nothing. My folks were out getting groceries and weren't coming back for at least another hour. Funny thing about this house is that somehow it's pressurized. Whenever an exterior door is opened, you can hear the frame creak and pop from anywhere in the house. As I make my way through this hazy, muted resemblance of my home, I stop yelling and freaking the fuck out long enough to remember that. I roll out the garage and such. Walk back to his room and stop to think. I walk out of the room and decide to start changing things. I closed doors after I thoroughly searched the rooms. I picked things up and left them in the middle of the floor. And lastly, turned on a table lamp in the living room that was on the other end of the hallway to the bedrooms. As I stood there thinking about what else to do, I see Jay walking out of the hallway, wide-eyed and pale, staring with his mouth slightly open. We exchanged our fair share of questions and what the fucks. We ended up with us recounting and reenacting our exact timeline itinerary, which placed us walking through each other at least 7 times. The icing on the cake, he went outside. He heard the house creak and I didn't. I don't know where the fuck I was, but it wasn't here. I scoured the web and watched countless goofy paranormal documentaries, but the only story I ever saw that sounded close was that of an Indian girl that had it happen to her when she was upstairs. She said she was getting ready for a party, when suddenly the laughter and talking from her family below fell silent. She describes the exact same muted environment and a lack of other people, except she stated that she saw Ganesh. Needless to say, I'm pretty turned about as to my whereabouts. I'm really hoping for at least one Redditor that can corroborate a similar experience. 5. I should point out first that I'm not a massive gambler. I like to gamble, but infrequently, and never more than I can afford. Okay, continue. Quite a number of years ago now, I made the decision to quit being employed and work for myself. I had saved some funds at the time, so had a decent buffer to keep me going. I used this opportunity to work on a piece of software called Objecti. It's basically a game development tool. So I started to run out of cash after about 1.5 years. And, well, I did what most people were doing at the time, turned to Kickstarter. This was way back when Kickstarter was still only in the US. I spent much time creating a campaign video, and was ready for day 1 of the UK launch of Kickstarter. I had an initial good start, and raised I think £5,000. It's been a while, I don't remember the exact amount. Unfortunately, things slowed down pretty quickly, so it wasn't looking good. At this point, my bank account was literally nearing zero. I had 1 month of rent left. So I get to the point about 6 to 7 days in. I had a family reunion weekend trip planned in Ireland. This already paid for way before, so it was a welcome break. This is where the glitch started. On the last day of the trip, we were in a shopping centre, and I spotted one of those high-ticket prize arcade machines. The ones that have consoles, cameras, etc. I kinda had this sensation that I would win if I played, So I played one game. I won. A handheld gaming device. The coin I had inserted was literally the last euro I had in my wallet. We were hours away from heading to the airport. So after this short break, I got back to the UK with some newfound energy to start a cram session. I had decided to try and push the beta of the software out, to try and attract more people to the Kickstarter. Basically, I was going to end up working pretty much solid, 5 to 6 hours sleep a day, for about 8 to 9 days. So on that first day of cram, the day after my prize win, I made a snack trip to the shop. I decided to buy a few scratch cards because, well, why not, eh? The situation was already pretty bad. I may as well see if luck would shine on me. I won £40. Well, it wasn't going to pay the rent, so I just spent it all on tickets for the next lottery draw. So halfway through my cram session, my brother offered to come support. It was also the same night as the lottery draw. It was about 2 a.m, and I thought I'd take a small break. My brother was on his PC behind me working on something. Again, I had this sensation. I just knew I would win. Like I was 100% certain. I know some people describe this feeling before every lottery draw, and I have similar thoughts in the past, but this was different. I flat out knew as fact that I would win. I checked my many lottery tickets, I got about halfway through the tickets. I had 5 numbers, the prize £2,500. This was like 3 months' rent and bills, sharing with the girlfriend. From this point on, I was allowed by this luck glitch, a window of time to shift gears and work. I can't say that the Kickstarter was a success, but in this window of time I landed some contract work, by chance again, and have never looked back since. So not as instantaneously glitchy as some other tales, but it has always stuck with me. That luck bomb that hit me literally at the last possible moment that it could have. That sensation of knowing something is going to happen is so odd. I have told it to people before. They are mostly impressed with the win, but just poo-poo the knowing aspect. A gambler's dream. Well, I can't explain it. It's a sensation I have never had since. 6. When I was about 8 years old, I was driving with my dad down I-75 in heavy rain, when we suddenly lost control and spun into a guardrail. The car was totaled, but we were both fine. Right after it happened, a red pickup truck pulled over and a guy got out to help. He was probably 30-ish, with short blonde hair and green eyes. What was most striking about him, though, was a kinda crescent-shaped birthmark under his left eye. I remember staring at it for a few seconds while he asked if I was okay, then gave my dad his cell phone to call a tow truck. A few months later, and I had completely put the experience out of my head. Fast forward a few years later, and I'm about 16, hanging out with my friends at a mall when we step into an American Eagle to look at some clothes. I head over to the jeans section alone when an employee comes up from behind and asks if I need any help. I turn around and almost immediately recognize him from the car accident I had. I was reluctant to ask if he remembered it, but I was more than sure it was the same man. Same exact haircut and birthmark, no mistaking it. Then a few years ago, a week after my 20th birthday, I'm in line at a grocery store with my girlfriend a few states over in Alabama. I live in Texas. When I look at the cashier the next register over and see the exact same man bagging groceries. We met eyes for a second and I froze up because I knew it was the exact same person I've encountered twice. He didn't look like he had aged at all since he pulled over after the accident. Last month I was at my nephew's baseball game sitting in the front row of the bleachers. In between the second and third inning, the home plate umpire came over to where he kept his water bottle on the back stop near my seat. He took off his mask and it was the same person, birthmark and everything. Didn't look a day older. I told my brother I had to leave to run an errand and I didn't return to the game. It may not be spooky or significant at all in my life, but it keeps me on edge in public now. I now look at every person I can because I don't want the next encounter to catch me by surprise. Edit. Since everybody is asking if I've confronted him, I haven't, but if I see him again I will. It was unsettling the times I've seen him, and didn't exactly make me want to go up and introduce myself. But I will ask him about it next time for y'all's sake. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to my latest Glitch in the Matrix video. Kinda struggling to find stories the right length this week, so that's why we've got 6 instead of the usual 5. I've been very sleepy all day. Don't know what's with me. Then again, I've been kinda off my usual schedule a wee bit, that's probably what it is. I better try and get into bed a bit earlier tonight. Okay, with those sleepy words, I think I'll head off and get some dinner. And then we'll see about maybe making the video and getting to bed. And with that, I'm off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.